Hi there, Randy Green here. Let's continue our little show off of what is going on in my everyday life. And this discussion I'm having with this group of Greys, they are leaving, and this is always whenever these races are deciding whether to stay or where to go or whatever's going on, which is interesting, but they always come around and I have to have these discussions with them. And it always ends up in them leaving because they understand why they can't stay. So with that, and you can say, well, Randy, isn't that just a total holographic play out? It could be. It could very well be. I don't know. But I'm playing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing the discussions. And here I will invite you in so you kind of understand whether if it's me being in the chair and being linked up to a holographic program, playing out scenarios from where some can harvest my genetics, my neurons, mainly with the brain, and from that one insert them into themselves thinking they will get this knowledge and then know how to deal with this, whatever. I don't know. These are the things you never know. So when you're doing this level of reality, as I am, sorry about that, you're in it. It's just you're in or you're out. And my mantra is all or nothing. So, and whatever it takes. So I go along and I do what I have to do, and this one as well. The question is if it's a good idea to share it with you or not. That's the question. But at the same time, I'm alluding to this high level of reality all of the time. And in that, it's just kind of me keeping the carrot in front of you and saying, oh, this is what is there. And then I never really tell you what it is, which is when you go to some of the ancient teachings, they do the same. And it's a little bit annoying, isn't it? So I'm having these Greys in my field and we're having this discussion. I know they are to leave because there's been a massive chemtrailing the last week. And today there's not any chemtrailing, and these Greys are in opposition with the humans in the segregated realities. The humans in the segregated realities have done and used their technologies, and these Greys are considering whether or not they want to stay or if they are to go due to the changes that are coming and will come and are in the making because the timeline event is ending, which means the foundation of most of these alien races are diminishing and disappearing, that's the right word. No matter how many times they try and reloop it, whenever they reloop our reality to try and prolong their existence and their work, and up here they actually empty out the timeline event because they're using the looping effect of the timeline event. And since it's emptied out of energy, whenever they do it deliberately, then they empty more of it out, which is good for us, but unfortunate for them because they hadn't foreseen that. And again, this is when you say, well, why do they come your way? Well, probably because I know some of these very old sciences. Okay, anyways, doesn't matter. It could be a total holographic play out. It's very likely, and at the end of the day, it could be just snakes that are playing out a whole scenario for me to get energy. But I will figure that one out eventually. They will then grow so strong so I can see them, and then I can pull them out and evaporate them and get rid of them, and then it's out of my timeline, and that distortion it holds, which they could be a representation of. Again, wrongful energies. So either way, whether it is holographic play out, I'm doing it because eventually it will lead me to the clue. If I am being used to harvest genetics, then I can clear that one out, get rid of the technology, the fields and the clone and all these kind of things. Is it snakes that are generated because of wrongful use of energy that are part of my timeline structure, which then needs to be cleared out because they are in my template due to the Leviathan genome? I need to clear it out. Are they underworld forces, which I began with this morning, that goes with the contamination in my base field because I'm clearing out the human DNA now? Am I to clear out these levels? Are they part of this? That could be very likely. And the numbers 9, 15, 18 would indicate all three. So either way, I'm working with it because this is the day, these are the energies, that's what's going on. So I'll clear it out and I will round off after this video, going out exercising on the military base and see what's actually going on out there. So I get a feeling of what is going on outside my little enclosure, which is my apartment. Okay, so we are having two issues here with the discussion, and they have been running this on me since last year. And this is also why I'm just doing it now. I'm just giving the information out because I've been battling with them for a whole fucking year now. And what was seeded in one cycle needs to be completed. And this was began last year in June, and I needed to stop because seriously, I'm so tired of being drawn through all of the steps and the hoops and the loops of what the Niborians did that led to the contamination, that led to these things, because they actually, with their mutation, they used the third cycle energies. The ability to replicate itself is third cycle energy. And that's also what when you got in the snake. This is why snakes has always been revered, because they can replicate themselves. They shed off their own skin and then they replicate themselves in a new form. They transform. So that you could say two reasons why did the Syrians work with the third cycle energies to begin with. One, perhaps because they were trying to create something that would allow them to continue to exist longer. I don't know. These are the unanswered questions, and these are hidden in the past. But what is an effect is that the Niborians, they were brilliant geneticists. They are from the, again, with the 5 pillar, they were working with that, but technically they are from the 10-4. But they're not truly 10-4s. They are a weird mix in between. And I have a slight suspicion that the Niborians are actually Vigas that in their lower form turned into the Niborians and then began spreading out and creating different realities, because the Niborian planet is the 10th. So that is a 10-4 pillar. But whenever I work with the species in the 10-4 pillars, it's always avian based. And the Niborians are, even though they did have wing, these winged soldiers which you were seeing in the gods, they did have wings, so they could have had some kind of avian infusion. But whenever I work with the ancient ones of the Niborians that were part of the workstation, I pull them out of their holographic distortion and get them into who and what they truly were. They were on the brink. They were from Vigar, and they were on the brink of becoming true humans. So there are some issues there that doesn't add up. Anyways, that's my process, doesn't matter. What matters is in the clearing process to get these holographic entities out of the programs is to make them remember who they are. From that one, we can detect their correct genetic composition. Then we can erase them in the holographic library, where they put in their book of life. So they were able to participate in the holographic realities. And from that one, we can detect their stasis body, deteriorate that one because it's so old now. So when you lift the lid, it just turns into dust, and they are freed, and they can release whatever remains of their genetics they put into the program. And these genetics go out through specific portals that are part of the program from where they can come out. Now you begin to see the tunnel of light and understand that one. So the holographic realities, the virtual realities, are very, very, very much part of our world already. They are tied intrinsically to the emotional field and the mental field, and that's even why we have these two types of fields. Now, there are two things that needs to be understood here. The two things are, we got the humans in the adjacent realities that needs to do the walk back. They are now genetically different and cannot be part of the human form as it is. They have tried many times. God knows I know it, but it's because, again, with me and what I work with and what my life consists of, the whole kind of solution of what is going on in our system and find the best solutions, because it all goes back to the workstations anyways. And what began there and what has unfolded into this. So this is the big grand cycle for me, which I need to complete, whether it is my personal memories that are now being played out in holographic realities for me to undo it and clear it out so I won't be stuck there, or it is actually events going on, which means that will lead to some solutions for some of the issues that are going on in our reality, which are the determining demarcation, not what determining what markers, that markers is the right word, the determining markers that are controlling the humans as they are in this reality. Either way, it's a piece of work that needs to be done. Now, the ones that want to do the walk back is a whole other thing on its own, which is very, very closely related to the understanding of the contamination and the way the genetics are built up. And this is where the Niborian tampering with our DNA comes in, because they were the ones that technically began the hybridization. That's why they got wings. They used avian genetics into the human genetics and created wings. And why did they do that? They did that because that was the first super soldier. The Nephilim, that was the first super soldier. But it began to break down, and in that, some of these very ancient Nephilims, which are not giants, but they were a different, they are giants, but that's not the Nephilim. Their genetics began to break down, and with that, some of the breaking down that came from that, even though that the Niburians tried to contain this, it spread out because genetics in a reality are interconnected through the collective fields. So that's how the contamination technically arose. So again with this also, when you then have the timeline event and this and the segregation and the attempt to create fields within fields, was that an attempt to try and counteract the contamination? Was the holographic realities within virtual things to try and clear out the contamination, what that's actually done for good, and then went totally wrong? That is very, very likely. But we have two main issues that remains here. One, the extreme number of grays that are harvesting from our reality, and they are parasiting, and they are very insectoid in their way of thinking. They are immensely stupid. Even though they're technologically extremely advanced, they are on a scale of understanding of transgression and understanding and what to do and what not to do, immensely stupid because they're machines. So whatever is left in their cube collective consciousness, that's their cube, that's their collective consciousness field. Whereas in living organic planetary systems, the grid and the energies of the planet is fueled by the races that live there. That's an organic planet, and our planet is organic, even though it is now 30-40% holographic, which will disappear eventually. My hope is that through this work I'm doing, I will get to the core facilities where I can shut down the holographic programs, and in that closing down the ability for the grays to be here at all, because they are using the holographic systems. But grays are not just grays. There are many different androids, and this is, I just work through the different bands of reality to get through them and have all of these stupid conversations with them. So we're having the walk back issue, which I probably will touch ground with later on when I plod my way through all of the holographs and the dark ones. I've gone with that one. The aliens have left, gone through the grays, got that one cleared out, shut down the event, so that's never going to happen. Get rid of that link up artificial parallel Earth they have created, get rid of that one, and that will be new Earth, that will disappear. And then work my way through all of these levels. And of course, I'm not the only one working with this. I'm working with my part of it and what I know and what I can go into. My advantage is I can go very, very far back. So with this, let's focus on the grays, because these are the ones that have been screwing around with me for a whole year and made my life extremely difficult. And they are doing this because they want a specific level of information from me. They want me to show them how to rebuild their template structure with organic code sequences so they can get out of their android form. And I'm telling them it's not possible, and they don't believe me. So they have been making a lot of very difficult things for me to try and get me to give them this information. First and foremost, the true information about how the templates are constructed. And right now, the templates I'm working with are the ones that are part of the holographic realities. And they don't want part of that one. And those of you who got the template reading and the humanoid genetics and all of this work I put there was originally building up to the effects of getting you out of the holographic link up, the astral barrier, the holographic teaching system that had been tampered with, the Syrian information cubes, and all of these kind of things that kept you in a semi-holographic artificial reality from where your inner human was fully and utterly and completely controlled. What you think is your soul is typically a holographic entity of yours in the holographic worlds, which are linked up to very, very different levels of holographic virtual realities from where parts of your genetics are playing out some kind of event line in a false time matrix, from where your genetics can be harvested through a clone that is linked into a chair that's linked up to some very advanced technology linking to these realities, from where they can brain drain you and harvest whatever they need to sell off to the other realities, from where different races have sustaining their own lives and continuation from the genetics from humanity using these technologies. So that was my idea by giving you in Terology how to activate the humanoid genetics, so you could begin freeing yourself from this enormous machinery of clones and trade and exploitation. However, it turned out that whatever was going on there was actually much, much worse than I anticipated, and therefore I shut it down and thought to myself, I'm never going to tell people about this because they cannot handle it, literally. Impossible. So I've been going on another way around this, and that is what my life has been about the last year. Okay, so we will have the walk back issue with the humans that are there, which I eventually will come to when I'm beginning to deal with human-to-human issues, and some of the ones that goes back to the planet that were part of the original 612 pillar from where I come. That will come later on. That's the walkbacks. But the Grace, whatever pillar they came from, that been using the 511 holographic teaching systems, a false one holographic virtual reality to produce genetics to develop themselves, have lost the ability to be in organic form. And in that, they have made different measurements to get to that level of survival, meaning they have made their realities fully transhuman and gathered the remaining genetics they had of the original versions they were in these grand cubes, that which they technically call a source. That's their God. So that is where they get their highest level of understanding from. The problem is these source cubes are getting affected now, because the androids are not, it was supposed to be a feedback system, which again with the whole kind of, there is always a feedback between the system and the life forms that live in it. If you use the crystalline technologies as they did in the Andromeda system, eventually, since there is no feedback from the planet to the humans that have gone eternal by crystallizing themselves in the fifth dimension, but they are not feedbacking anything to their system. So eventually the system looks at the planet itself, because these are some very advanced constructions. They're not alive that way, but there are critical mass, if you like that expression instead. Energies that can express life, as I said, the third cycle reached the level of residual, so no life forms could be generated there or spawned there, and hence whatever was in these cycles then began to deteriorate and cease to exist. That's the natural way things go. When there's no viable life and it has no purpose and it does not live up to the standards of its system, it begins to deteriorate. So in the crystalline worlds, in the Andromedan system, the crystalline humans, even though they were eternal and they had the diamond body or the rainbow body, if you like, they began to deteriorate as well, and eventually they went in one big pile of sand, and the planets that had chosen that one began to evaporate and cease to exist. Hence, traveling back to solve that equation as well in android forms, because that was the only thing they could muster. So we are having different forms of androids here, whether they're from the Andromedan system or they are from the original universal workstation that are the core facilities of this system, or whatever they were. So these are the things that we're dealing with, and they want me to reproduce for them a sort of template that will be able to work within the organic form. Now, through this long line of work with the holographic, once they have finally discovered that that's no use, whatever they have done in the military projects, that was the originally military projects. And that's why the military projects in the 50s and onward began the computer technology, virtual reality technology, time travel technology, and all these kind of things that are utilizing the quantum potentials as well as the grid energies, but in their frequency form, which are easy to link up to machines. These machines were supposed to be implemented into our reality so that humans could develop themselves through an interface system between machine and man, from where they would become knowledgeable of how to work with the Pleiadian technology. That Pleiadian technology that got sold for them were not true Pleiadian technology. It had infusions of Leviathan genome as well to link up to the holographic worlds, as well as Orion infected genetics. The Greys did not tell that to the military. So instead of creating super soldiers for the militaries in humans that had this, unforeseen events unfolded from that one. One of them were those of you who go far back with me, you remember I had this from these military projects when they have been shut down now because we have cleared it out and we have all of the souls that were lost there and blah blah blah, all of this. But anyways, those of you who go back with me in 16, I had this reptilian on my table, and that was one of my funny things when I was still naive and were in the making of waking up and trying to remember who the fuck I am and what I'm capable of doing. The military brought me, or two Greys actually, brought me this reptilian, very big reptilian, and placed it on my healing table. And it was just lying there in the fourth dimension. And I couldn't do anything on the healing table because I had a reptilian there. And I made a video of it. It was quite funny, actually. But it had some unfortunate comments, and people did not grasp it, and they didn't understand it, and didn't understand what I was doing. And in that, it just led to a shitstorm of me instead, so I took it down. But the fact is that this reptilian that was on my table was not a reptilian, it was actually a human of the super soldiers. Now, it took me some time to figure this one out, and I figured it out eventually by discovering the device in the brain of the human that runs with specific series of enzyme upgrade from where different levels of the alien genetics could be infused into the human. The unfortunate side effect of this one was that this specific type of Pleiadian genome had a lot of reptilian in it, and therefore that super soldier, instead of being able to run the Pleiadian crafts, he had turned into a reptilian instead, which is a huge problem. Because if you turn reptilian, your genetics become rudimentary, and then you can't progress, and then you will begin to deteriorate, or you will eventually turn fully reptilian, from where you become a very, very different personality structure, which is not in alignment with what the military wanted as a super soldier. And now you're just thinking, okay, Rana, that is too much science fiction for me. Well, that's my life. So with this, and I know it's going on, because when I was in Australia, I was harbour of Sydney and all these kind of things, and there is so much going on the military crafts in the ocean as well, not the ships. When they go out on sea, because out there you can link up to the underwater bases of these different races, as well as the other humans that are living in segregated realities. They bridge into our reality through the portal system that is in the ocean. With this superhuman program, they developed these superhumans in the fourth dimension and these hidden bases in the segregated realities, again using the segregation technology that allows for a space within a space, using the third cycle energy. And this is where it goes wrong all the time, because they're creating realities based upon a holographic teaching system or a holographic virtual reality system that is already infected with the Leviathan genome, which means that no matter how much they're using these technologies, it will always begin to create residuals in the brain, including black snakes or leeches. They all look like leeches. And as they grow in the brain, they begin to take over and eat and chew their way through the brain neurons. And then that human becomes very dark. And when that human becomes dark, they get susceptible or receptible for the possession from the dark ones, which are holographic dark shadow beings that have lost the ability to be in any other side than in the dark worlds within the holographic programs. These holographic programs are the virtual reality setup that are running the understanding of the polarity games, that are running the brain field of the majority of humans that are doing this work. Well, it does work. It does not mean that these good and bad worlds are out there. It actually means that they are linked up to a false time matrix that is run by the polarity programs, because someone down the line figured out that was a good idea to create these very, very dark things, or it was the Leviathan genome that eventually led them to create these dark worlds. You decide yourself. So that made the superhuman program go wrong. First, they had got genetics and technologies from these crappy greys in the 50s that were already contaminated and infected. They had the Leviathan genome in them. The technologies they built were not working correctly, which means they couldn't really operate the crafts as they were supposed to, and they turned reptilian for the majority of them. And this is the background whenever you have people talk about being in the military bases and they say greys and insectoids, and then they see this weird reptilian just standing there, or these reptilian soldiers or whatever being part of that. They used to be human. That's a big problem, because the moment these human soldiers turn into full-blown reptilian, they became extremely aggressive and similar to a raptor. So you can't control them, and therefore they had to be taken out eventually, and that project was shut down. And I know it sounds like a fucking movie. I know it. Anyway, so all of these programs that have been running here fail. And they fail because their foundational base of these things, when they tamper with the human genome and they're trying to build in with the human genome or do gene splicing or hybridization, which is more correctly, and use other alien genetics or whatever they are doing here, their base genome is infected. It is linked up to holographic worlds that were seeded in a very long time ago on these timelines, from where the moment they begin to activate the human genome into another dimension, this sparks to life. And if a human holds the Leviathan genome in the template already, that will begin to drizzle into the human brain and take over the human form. And in that one, create a lot of deception and delusion in that human, making it impossible for that human to discern between the holographic realities and the real reality, which, trust me, I know everything about, because clearing my way through all these false time matrices and get to the core of them so I can take them out, whether it's a game that's been played on me so I can show them how to take them out, or I'm actually doing it, it doesn't matter. Once I completed that sequence and got to the bottom, I kind of, there's a specific way of taking them out. I'm just using this analogy for you. Get to that point where I can take this out and clear out the virtual reality and shut it down and all the timelines that goes with it. It disappears and it's never part of me again. Okay, so that's why I continue doing so, because there is this, if I try to turn the other cheek, they'll just ruin my life literally to make me complete the sequence. So this is also why I'm doing this video. For some odd reason, they want it out there, probably because, I don't know, they want you to amplify it, probably. Those of you listening to this, for sure you are amplifying this level of information. But I'm also thinking, well, what the heck, on the other hand, I've been trying to keep it a secret for 3 years now. Let's get it out in the open. Let's see what happens with that one. And you can call that reckless for sure. But sometimes you need to make a bold move to create changes. So this is me making a bold move by telling things as they actually are. Now, with the androids, they want me to show them how to create a template that will allow them to go from their android form by the use of this template and into an organic form, which means a human. They want to take their android genetics, insert it into that template, and that template they want to link up to their human projects, which they have bought access to by the humans in the other realities that are also wanting to know how to work with this, because they need the same template to do the walk back. Their genetics are so dissimilar from the current human that they need someone to develop a template or an organic structure that will allow them to bridge from their virtual realities and back into ours. And when I say virtual, they are not fully virtual, they are semi-virtual, they are holographic organic. They run mainly on holographic technology. So if you take out the holographic technology, you are left behind with a world that literally is just grass and greens and trees and the organic forms they have, but everything else they have built there will dissipate, including their mind field and their heart fields. What will be left will be the ants, the snakes, the spiders, the crickets, whatever they have turned into, or snakes. Different attempts have been made to try and get in. Some of them have been used by parasitic, like the ego parasite. That's part of that project of trying to create a secondary ego structure or a personality within the organic form, the already existing human. Then you've got the ego parasite trying to create a way to bridge in. And then if it had succeeded well, the idea was that the ego parasite would explode, the genetics from the ego parasite would then merge in with the current human form, and then the human ego and the ego parasite would then merge back in, and they would continue their existence there, transferring themselves from their adjacent realities and into ours through the ego parasite that would then become part of the human form as it is merging in. Of course, they had foreseen this with a lot of technology that were linked up, and this is where the mind control of the military projects come in, because that was also part of that one. From that one, they would then literally slowly but surely take over the human, transform the human into something else, from where they then promised the military, if we can do this in this reality, we will create the forefront of the next human race. These are the human selection programs. That's how that one works. This is not working well, because whatever programs they got from this one are infected again with the Leviathan genome. Every holographic technology they use in this reality has that problem. Why do you think we were quarantined to begin with? And the human genome, because of the Niburian tampering and the shit they did there, which were under the administration of one of the ones you know as Inanna. She was one of the main leaders of this one, and she looks very, very different than what she's been depicted at in the Sumerian tablets and these kind of things. But she had more Maldakian features, which mean blonde hair, very tall, very beautiful, the Pleiadian structure. That's why I say Maldakian. And Maldak was the 5th planet. That's a 511. So now you kind of get why Maldak exploded. They were a shitty race, and they will always remain shitty ones. And they are the ones that did survive, became the dark ones, including the ones that got lost in Orion. But that's a whole other story. Now, so the ego parasite, which is behind the Naga, which has always been all of these grand people in history, whether it was the pharaohs or it was the whatever was operating in this reality, they were enhanced by the TG, which got inserted. And the plan were always to take over that human so they could be in this reality, gain control of it, get a human vessel, from that one on, develop it from where they could continue. And if they died and had taken over that human form in this reality, because if you die in a world, you get reborn there. And if they had reached enough in genetic and understanding of how to operate the human form, they would be reborn and they could continue their existence, getting rid of their stasis body, getting rid of the android form, and in that one on, get a human vessel which they had lost their access to. So these are things that go very, very far back. And now you begin to understand why civilizations have risen up and become high civilization and then fall totally apart. Because the moment these parasites explode in humans, it activates the Leviathan genome or the contaminated genome, which is called a Tiamat genome. Because technically it came from the first planet that got infected was the Tiamat, as I said, the Niburians. And if you read the stories of Tiamat, she was a titan, and her husband got killed, blah, blah, blah. She got very pissed, and then she created a lot of shitty creatures. And these creatures exist, part of the underworld. But that's not Tiamat as a goddess. That is that planet that created a lot of shit because of the use of the 3rd cycle energies. Because it expands. So if you have, there's a good movie, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. It's all of these human knowledge, I can never remember it. But there is the DNA tampering where you have this monkey and it gets contaminated with a specific type of alien thing that's been developed in space. Sounds familiar. And then it grows into enormous proportions of King Kong. Okay, so now you're beginning to get, perhaps that's actually why we had dinosaurs. Were they actually supposed to be reptilians that grew out of proportions due to the use of the 3rd cycle energies? You figure out yourself. So that is not good. Because that's the 3rd cycle. The worlds in the 3rd cycle were bigger and looked different. That's also why many of the ancient aliens are very tall. Whereas the 4th cycle, space had become more dense and hence the forms grew smaller. And probably also why they wanted to experiment with that. Someone thought, oh, I want a big King Kong as a pet or something. No, just joking here. So, to get to this understanding, and this is why are the Greys here? They are here because they're trying to find a solution to their problems. And they're using humanity to an extensive level to get there. They're using humans to either seed in technologies they think will help them to get over the human forms. They're also pondering, well, can we make them semi-transhuman and then bridge in there, make half cyborgs, and then put ourselves in there, and then create the template that is needed for that one, and then develop ourselves out of the cyborg state, which has also been part of some of the link up I've been doing when they played that one out on me. So these are the whole understanding of what's going on in our reality. For those of us who were deep in the alien ground and the false time matrices, and the full understanding of what's been going on in the other dimensions. Understand that this is a race towards humanity waking up and becoming who they truly are, getting rid of all of these holographic technologies, getting rid of the parasites, getting rid of the exploitation, getting rid of all their bad habits, getting rid of exemplifying all of this shit from these alien races, and learning to do it the right way, which is what I'm trying, really want to go forward towards, and try and remember the good sciences and how things were supposed to be. Whenever I move 2 steps in the right direction, they come in with shit like this, pulling me back. Typically happens when I sleep, even though I go to sleep very late to try and avoid it. It doesn't matter. The moment I fall asleep, I'm pulled in, they shitstorm me, they give me this information, and then I wake up and we have to deal with this crap. And I have to have these long conversations with them why it cannot work. Now, what is the main problem with an android form? And an android form, first and foremost, it runs on lunar energies. We have established that one. Lunar energies means it's frequency based. But it's not frequency based in a normal way. It's based upon not neutron, proton, and electrons. They have removed the electron and the proton, and they're now only running on neutrons, because neutrons have a specific way of not deteriorating. And they're not breaking down things, which we've seen in the neutron bomb. It takes away life forms, but it leaves buildings behind. Gray are machines, so they can only use the neutron energies. It looks like Mercury. When they use that one, that creates a specific type of energy in their energy system. That means they can't have a heart field and a brain field as we have. They can have organic energies because they don't have the proton and the electron that creates that circuit that is foundational for the lunar energies. The lunar energies, proton, electron, neutron, are a trident or a triangular energy composition. That's why it's a 3-9. The base level of it is a planet that came from the third system, third cycle. That is the moon. That's why it's dust now. And it had this ability working within a triangle. And these are some of the things I cannot remember yet. So in that, to be able to get back into an organic form, they will need protons and they will need electrons. Now, in its rough understanding, the protons are the ones that are similar to what is running your emotional field, emotional energy. The electrons are similar to what is going on in your brain. The brain is electrical currents, circuits, whereas the emotional field is more run by electrochemical, which is more molecular based, which goes more in hand with the proton energies. Proton and electrons are 2 different ways of a specific type of energy that are not really fully understood by scientists today. They break it down into smaller and smaller subatomic particles, and these particles have up quark and down quark and up spin and down spin and these kind of things. They are part of the quantum field, the quantum soup that goes into the 4th dimension. So a proton is a bridge into a specific type of vibration from the 4th dimension. An electron is a bridge into a specific type of emission or radiation energy from the 5th dimension. The neutron is supposed to balance these 2 things out, and in the grays, that is what is creating their android form. Now, the neutron is kind of I haven't got the full understanding of that one, how that actually works and why that is there. So that is also blocking I have, which means I don't fully understand the properties of the neutron other than what has been used in weapons and how it creates a specific type of fusion which science has not, which is part of the neutron bomb and what it can do. So with that, I don't have much knowledge about the neutron. So when it comes to frequency energies, I don't have that in my knowledge base because I'm not from the moon. So I don't have that in my knowledge base. So I can't tell how these energies were supposed to look in the lunar system, other than I can say they're closely connected to the purple frequency spectrum, which goes with what we understand as magic. That means the use of symbols. So with that, my knowledge base that's a problem there. So that means I can't create the original form of knowledge for them, how to be able to get back to their lunar energetic energy system, or their energy system based upon the original lunar energies. They have tried to send people my way that came from the moon. Some of the original ones, they tracked them down and sent them to me and asked me to do template readings and so forth. But I still can't detect it because I'm not from the third line pillar. I haven't done any work there. So I don't know. So this is the first step. Secondly, this energy is dying out. It's an old cycle, and it already has residuals in it, as we talked about the infection of the Leviathan genome. So how they're going to do this? They can only administer it by using holographic technology. They cannot work with it in its organic form because it's already holding residuals. So there's a foundational problem. So how have they tried to solve this? They looked into the fourth cycle track down system that had fourth cycle humans, which we have in our solar system. Thank you to the Niborians that created a fourth cycle hybrid human, which are the ones that we are talked about in the humans they created in the fourth cycle after the big ice age and these kind of things. So they went here because if you can't do it in the third cycle, you have to go to the next. Now this means that they have been trying to figure out how this fourth cycle human has worked with the Niborian stuff. And that's also why they probably, or I don't know, it doesn't matter. I've been drawn through a lot of fourth cycle history to get to the understanding, okay, how does the fourth cycle human genome actually looks? And again, I'm coming to a halt in that knowledge because I don't know. I'm not a Niborian. I was against these hybridization programs they made, and I outed Inanna in the councils, and that's why she became my sworn enemy, because I outed her and I didn't want to support these programs because you don't hybridize. You keep genetics pure. They break down when you hybridize them. There's a reason why we develop within the pillars. So with this, I don't know the foundational concept of the human genome as it is today either. But they have been trying to, through that one, to get their emotional field back and their mental field back. Again, with tampering, with the virtual reality link up through movies and stuff, which they have been using in humans to figure out a way to develop the neurons in the brain of humans by the use of movies, clone link up, and all these kind of artificial programs, which the military from the 50s and onward participated in, thinking that they would develop the human population through these programs that would make humans in their sleep or in their wake state participate in these semi-artificial realities, developing a new brain structure. At least that's what they told them. Here it goes wrong because that is where the Greys didn't understand the infectious level of the Leviathan genome. They were already part of these technologies that operate in our system. That's why it got shut down. As well as the human brain as it is built upon these ancient technologies and the way they were supposed to link up to the holographic teaching system that got contaminated, or infected more correctly, by the Syrians that took part of Atlantis. There was a reason why Atlantis got shut down as well. So with that one, that's the first step. Third problem. The fourth problem is the emotional field. And that demands a heart field where you can actually have emotions. And this is where the whole weird link of progression teams, which I tried to begin last year, got sabotaged right away. But the Greys have been trying to team people together to create emotions that run not just in this life, but in past lives, and making them unfold all of these weird emotional scenarios to get the full scale of the human emotionality, past, present, and future. And trust me, they have run me through so many different holographic programs and putting so many memories in me that half of them cannot be mine. Because if that was the case, wow, I have been busy. But that was all to play out a specific type of emotion that would then affect the proton. which they then thought they could harvest, as well as what's been going on in the organic form. Of course, it doesn't work. You can't harvest energies from others that are linked to a heart field that is linked to a beating heart and blood and life and an original functioning template, because they misunderstand this all the time. They think it's all about mechanics, because they're mechanical. So they think, oh yeah, we just harvest the emotional field, pull it out of humans, and then plunge it into us, and then we get emotions. Hell no, it doesn't work that way. It is a field and you can harvest it, but you can't just put it in and clone it in someone else. Of course not. It's linked to the heart, it's linked to the emotional habitus, and it's linked to everything that the human is, going to the template level. The same with the brain. It's not the neurons. The neurons are the expression of what's been going on in the template, the upper template, and the knowledge base that's there going into either the holographic library or the true version that this human used to be. So you can harvest as many protons and electrons you like and try to create an artificial molecule, but you will never become organic from it anyways, because it will break down. The foundation of it, which is the template, is not present. Okay? That is probably why they pushed me to do the template readings to begin with, to get that understanding of the technology. So in many ways you can say, Randy, would you have been activated if it wasn't because of these shitty races that needed to survive? That is a very, very good question. Probably not. I was, in 2016, I was doing a lot of good work, and I've done a lot of healing work. I was already onto it, and yeah, I had the sporadic aliens and these kind of things, but not to the extent that happened in 16. Then it kind of turned into a full-blown 24 hours, segregated, different reality, getting this understanding and full understanding of what was going on. You could also say it was because in 16 we got really, really drawn into some very, very shitty things due to the critical mass, and the promoting of all the negative energy had finally stirred up a lot of things that needed to be shut down. Doesn't matter. It is what it is. It all comes down to the template. It all comes down to that one. Without a template, there is no organic form. So as long as there is a template and there is energies from the template in the emotional field and the mental field, the human is alive. The moment the template ceases to exist, eventually over time, the mental field will then begin to deteriorate, the emotional field will then deteriorate, and eventually, lastly, the organic form will cease to exist. Hence the reason why there's been this tremendous trade of these holographic templates that have been chopped up and divided and cloned and replicated by the aliens that have worked here, so they had organic forms that could produce the genetics they needed. You're beginning to see where we are. At the end of the day, they're running out of these templates, because at least the ones I know of, because the holographic programs are shutting down due to the work I have been doing, as well as the programs that didn't work, the templates they had, which they put in and invested into the military projects, did not succeed and broke down. So they are running out of templates. So this is why the attempt to try and make me create one. And this is where it comes in, and this is where I say, well, fuckers, too bad for you. Because you fucked me up, excuse my language, whenever I talk about these races, I always slander them. You fucked me up to begin with, you tampered with my template, you have cloned me out to so a great extent that you have literally broken down my template and polluted it and shitted it. And that means I can't reach the higher level of my knowledge, because you're constantly trying to harvest whatever I produce. And in that way, you're gnawing off your own pore. You are sawing off the branch you're sitting on. You will never get that knowledge. And this is where it shows stupidity. This is where I say I don't like stupidity. Because they don't understand this. They don't understand that if they even want to have a chance for me to revive my knowledge base around these things, they need to let me grow into my full potentiality. But they see this as an immense threat, and they can't wait because they are dying out. So they're harvesting everything they can before it's even completed. It's like you're eating the fruit of the tree before it's even got to the cycle where it goes into full blossom, and by that one you're preventing it from seeding new seeds. So with that, we are in a catch-22 or an evil circle or whatever, and they are doing that to humanity as well. So now you begin to understand why humans are not waking up, and why whenever they do wake up a little bit, they get set back because they get harvested. These greys are so hungry that they can't wait for the full ripe. Plus, they are also afraid that if you do get to your full potentials, you will be able to see them, and then you will be able to take them out. And that's why they only activated very, very few that could have given them the scientific answers, and at the same time keeping that person, me included, under very, very restrained, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. So with that, we are having a problem here. We're having problems with races that have been exploiting us. These races are dying out now. They need what we have. But at the same time, they won't allow us to wake up so we can develop into what we're supposed to be, from where, if they were thinking logically, they would actually be able to do the correct replication. However, you cannot replicate genetics, because whatever genetics a person holds will never be able to be replicated and put into another. These are two different types of genetics, two different types of organic forms, and two different types of templates. So yeah, it might look on the surface that the human DNA is similar, but it isn't. It's not. Can never be. It takes form after what they feel and what they think and what they are. And no matter how much they try and put us into the clone programs and put us up in the chair and create specific thought forms and specific emotions and run us through different scenarios and abduct us and do shit with us, they will never become us, because they come from another system. And they are fundamentally built out of another type of energy. That's why they could turn android into machines, which we can't. So trying to make us into machines does not make us closer to their civilization. On the contrary, we will break down this, because we are not machines. We were never machines. We are organic life forms. And this is why they are probably going away from the 3D printing of organs and going into doing it in embryos and shit, as I talked about in the previous video, and has a link below in the previous video. And trying to do that engineering. Making humans incubators, making animals incubators for their genetics. They've already been trying that in animals. Didn't work. The reptilians have been doing that quite extensively. It does not work. It's a different life form. You cannot grow a human genome inside a rat without the human genome taken on after the rat's genetics. So that means that if you do brew human genomes, genetics in a rat, and you succeed creating an organ there, and you implant it into a human, it might look human DNA-wise, but energetically speaking, it's an organ from a rat. And that rat energy will affect the emotional field of the human, and it will affect the brain field of a human. So that is also why we cannot allow for this. Humans out there, you and I, and those of us who are doing this, you need to be on your toes with whatever scientists are doing out there. And at some point, we will need to raise a voice against these sciences. And we will figure out a way to do it in a logical, rational way they understand. Because they don't understand that if you incorporate a heart valve from a cow, then you put a cow in a human. Energetically, that's a big screw up. And that's why the body's rejecting it naturally. There's a reason why species do not intermate. There are very, very good reasons for this. And scientists need to stop the hybridization. They need to stop these experiments. I cannot stress this enough. And I'm still figuring out how can we get through to them. How can we get this information out there so they will stop it? But the core issue is not the humans that are doing it. The core issue, who's controlling them. And this is where I work with the adjacent realities. And these are the ones I will get to eventually when we begin really talking about the future humans. Because these are, whatever we are going to have of future humans, there are a lot of core issues that needs to be dealt with. There are the infection, the Leviathan genome. There's the Tiamat, or the contamination genome that's in the bio-DNA. There are the old technologies that needs to be taken out. I've been working extensively on that one, but there's so much. And humans have it in their templates, and if they don't know how to work with it, it will activate eventually as the energies rise up. There are the whole issues of trying to control the awakening process of humans through liquid light technology, and in that one, control the human field. But if you control the human field and you use that technology, you won't have progression, and you will end up in the issues which the crystalline had, which eventually leads the planet to have no recognition of anyone alive, and therefore it will begin to go into its shutdown sequences from where it will reset itself so it can spawn new life. The matters of awakening humans, the matters of freeing humans, the matters of doing this is not a simple thing. There is enormous amount of factors that both go in with humans that are here in this reality field, humans outside, and the alien species that are operating here. There are the enormous issues of the past which I still don't have the answer to. And there are the issues with our genetic structure and with what will come when the true energies begins to come back in. Because that is where the hybridization is going to be an enormous problem. Because our planet is a 6th density planet and it has been downsized into a 4th density planet, which in itself is going to create a lot of problems. We have a lot of life forms out there that are unnatural to our system, but they have been created to be incubators. And that goes amongst the majority of the animal life forms we have today. Some of them are even linked up to old human forms of which used to be shapeshifters from the middle domain. The complexity of the issues that we are facing, and I'm dealing with every day in my talks with whether it's middle domain or core domain or inner domain or alien races or whatever it is this complexity of how to solve this awakening process. And this is also when we come into the whole kind of how much can I educate others to work with this, since that complexity is so vast and so complex that the human brain in itself can barely contain that level of information. So again, with the whole thing, I wanted to create schools that were teaching this. It's impossible. It's literally impossible until people see it. And that's what the military projects knew. They knew this was impossible to teach humans. This was impossible to show humans. Hence the mind control, hence the programs, hence the movies, hence all of these attempts to build it into the human consciousness. So eventually a selected part of humanity through specific developmental programs would be able to comprehend and understand this, and they would become the forebearers of the next level of the human civilization. But I'm not into these programs. I am deeply embedded into them because of what has happened in my life. And I know a lot of stuff from these programs. And that also goes with whenever people are saying we need disclosure, we need disclosure. These are the issues. How are you going to disclose that? How are you going to disclose this complex system we are in and all of these issues to humans that barely are capable of understanding quantum sciences, that are barely capable of facing their own emotional issues, that are still immersed in a belief system that there is a God that will take care of everything because they are created? How are we going to deal with this? And that is part of where I go and say, okay, then we need to work with people. We need to teach them the original ways of being in this system. So we first and foremost get a population or a portion of humans that will survive the incoming energies. And that's the clearing work. And this is also where I began with this. And this is where I have a lot of good ideas of how we could do so. But the humans I'm working with are all part of different human projects under these grays and these harvesters and these things. And they only push humans my way so they can harvest from them, not to actively let these humans develop their capacity. So I'm up against all odds in this. And this is where when we talk about these things and when we talk about what am I supposed to do, not being self-pity or anything, but what am I supposed to do if you who are out there are doing these teachings, and I've been working with people for 2 or 3 years, they have not moved 1 inch. because they're not willing to let go of this or that or whatever, and they got human emotions and they got their comfort zones and they're afraid of this and they're afraid of that, and oh no, this is so much more important, and oh no, this is so much more important, I want to keep this one, I want to do this, whatever. There's always something that is more important than the future of humanity. And this is where we get with the whole kind of, we had the 2012 as an attempt to try and create doomsday scenario. Did that make people change? No, not at all. Then we had the whole kind, okay, let's fucking move them all into a parallel reality and then take them out of their human form and create a new civilization. Did that work in the parallel Earth scenario? Oh no, it did not. It on the contrary. So they had to ship them back in, which did not go so well either. You have no idea what they have tried to solve this issue with the human stubbornness and lack of ability to evolve and progress. And it all comes down to 1, the Niburian fuckery, 2, the Leviathan genome, and 3, the contamination. The foundation of the current human form is not particularly good. And that is why when we talk about humans who are doing this work, who are willing to do it correctly and in deep and in depth and through all the way through and through, it is not a simple piece of work. It is a dedicated work for life to transform into something that is partly not really part of this world yet, but it will be the forefront of a human civilization that will continue to ping back and forth with the original construction from where we can still tell it. There are actually people alive here. We are not cyborgs, androids, virtual reality, fucked up, contaminated, infected, shit race, but there are actually viable humans here living according to the original programs. That's my strategy. Let's see how much I will succeed. Fortunately, I've got a very, very long lifespan ahead of me, and I'm taking extremely good care of myself so I can see what I can do. But eventually, I can only do so much on my own. I need someone to exemplify it eventually. And I'm not there yet, and you are not there yet. Nobody's there yet. I have no clue how I can teach this to you. Absolutely no clue. Because this knowledge is not something you can learn. This is your soul knowledge. This is from your template. This is from who you truly are. And not until you are that will you incorporate it into your organic form. It can never be taught. It has to be experienced. Only if you experience it will it become part of you. So this is as well when I say this, okay, for now I'm just doing the influencing, I'm just doing the sharing, I'm just seeding out thought forms there. And then we will see, first and foremost with these races, will they allow for humans to actually do the work so they can get out of it? Will these races totally go so human can become what they're supposed to be on their own, working their way through all of these layers? Will the adjacent reality humans, when they do the walk back, how's that gonna unfold? That will begin in 5 years' time or so. We're going to have some very, very interesting things that will come there. What will that lead to? Will it lead to a boom of intelligence and knowledge and memories and work-throughs, or will it lead to an enormous amount of trauma and underworld shit that will rise up and take over humans? We don't know this yet. Will the futures that we're going into, will they eventually be taken over by the grace, which will then think, okay, let's make everything transhuman, and we'll take as much as we can to prolong our lifespan as much as we can, and then hopefully we'll figure out how to deal with that as the energies rise up into the 4th and the 5th dimension, because the moment we hit the 5th dimension, they're out, they cannot continue to exist. As I said, many of them came from Maldak. So that means that will stop their lifespan. Then their cycle will be completed and they'll like Maldak did too. How quickly they're going to reach that one? It all depends on how much they harvest and how many times they reloop. Are they going to expedite their cycle quickly so we get rid of them quickly, and then we will all end up with just being humans from this solar system, figuring out how to continue our evolution? When we reach that point, which will be in the near future, there's going to be a lot of discussion of how to do this, and it's not going to be simple either. The military projects from the 50s have failed. The majority of them are shot down. The aliens that participated in that has left. they got what they needed. They have got their harvested genetics, whatever they had here. At the end of the day, it didn't work, so they ended up just taking their own templates with them, as well as the genetics they gave to the Atlantean project to begin with, and in that one, shutting that one down, completing the Atlantean timeline that has now been shut fully down. We are in the run out of the fourth cycle timeline. That needs to be shut down. That's the Nibiruan experiment that goes into Egypt, that goes into Mesopotamia, both on the same time, going into Israel, going into the Mediterranean civilizations, going into Greece, going up to Europe, and going up to England, going to America, and that way unfolding. That needs to play out, whatever took part there, and that all depends on how quickly humanity is ready to let go of religion, let go of spirituality, and let go of these belief systems that are based upon ancient ideas and ideologies from that time period. Then the next big challenge will be, when they let go of this, will they then turn into the other side, which will be totally scientific? And if that happens, we have the unfortunate possibility of drawing in the AI futures to us. So that needs to be avoided as well. So the only way we can get through these transition changes is if people begin thinking future-wise. If I do this, what would be the consequences of it in the long run? What is actually going on here? And that's where I have begun now with saying, okay, then I have classes where I teach the principles, the rules of engagement, and the energetic laws. And we will take it from there and see where that will take us. And then, aside from that, I will do whatever I can to avoid these unfortunate futures that are lurking out there because humans have become what they have become. These are a very critical time period, the next 20 years, that will define the future of humanity. And climate changes are just one little tiny thing that goes with that one. Thank you.